Welcome to this explainer. Let's just dive right into it. Today, we're unpacking the architecture of ISO 14001-2026. And look, this isn't just some dry set of rules. It's a completely transformative way organizations are expected to structure, calculate, and prioritize their critical environmental risks. So if you want to know how modern environmental management systems separate the real risks from all that background noise, you are definitely in the right place. We got to start with kind of a tough question, right? Why do so many environmental management systems just fail their ISO audits? It's a phenomenon we can basically call the auditor's trap. See, organizations constantly stumble right at the starting line when they're trying to identify their actual environmental footprint. They build these massive, incredibly complex documentation systems, but they base them on a fundamentally flawed understanding of where their real environmental impacts actually lie. They completely miss the big picture. So, to avoid that trap, here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll define our EMS boundaries. Then, we'll look at integrating that system into the business, identifying aspects, using the digital scoring matrix, and finally, linking those scored risks straight to actionable objectives. Okay, let's go. Kicking things off with Section 1, defining the boundaries of your environmental management system, or EMS. You can think of this as putting up the physical and organizational fence around what you're actually managing. Now, a super common trap here is what we call an artificially limited scope. This happens when a company intentionally draws their boundary around just their corporate admin offices to make an audit easier, completely ignoring, say, their massive manufacturing plants or chemical warehouses. That is an immediate nonconformance. ISO 14001 actually demands a life cycle perspective scope. That means you have to include your full production, warehousing, transportation fleets, and even outsourced processes if you have influence over them. You literally can't just exclude a high-risk facility out of convenience. The boundary has to reflect your genuine reality. Once you've got those boundaries drawn, we move right along to Section 2, integrating the EMS into the business. I actually love this quote from the source material. It says, "Environmental management systems are not intended to operate as isolated administrative mechanisms." Basically, your environmental management can't be a dusty binder sitting on a shelf somewhere in the compliance department. It can't exist in a silo. If it's just this parallel paperwork exercise that's disconnected from how the company actually operates and makes money daily, it is absolutely going to fail. For an EMS to truly work, it's got to be baked right into the organizational DNA. It needs to touch procurement, like are you actually selecting suppliers based on their environmental performance? It has to be in product design. Are you engineering products to use less energy? It must integrate with maintenance so equipment doesn't leak or overconsume power. It's got to guide logistics and route optimization to cut emissions. And absolutely crucial here, it must sit right inside your enterprise risk management, right alongside your financial and operational risks. Okay, now that the system is woven into the business, we hit Section 3, identifying environmental aspects. This is all about building your organizational radar to detect exactly how you interact with the world around you. We really need to get our definition straight here, because messing this up is a massive audit trap. An environmental aspect is basically the cause. It's the element of your activity that interacts with the environment, say burning fuel, discharging wastewater, or making noise. The environmental impact, on the other hand, is the effect. It's the actual change to the environment, like greenhouse gas accumulation or water contamination. It's all about systematically mapping that cause to that effect. But here's the catch. You can't just look at a perfect sunny day at the office. Your radar has to cover 3 very specific scenarios. Normal operations, which is your day-to-day workflow. Abnormal conditions, like a factory startup or shutdown where emissions might suddenly spike. And, most importantly, reasonably foreseeable emergency situations. If you store hazardous chemicals, what happens if there's a massive spill? If your system only manages the 9 to 5 good days and completely ignores emergencies, it is fundamentally broken. And that brings us to what's really the climax of this explainer, Section 4, the digital scoring matrix. So you've identified dozens, maybe hundreds of environmental aspects. How on earth do you decide which ones matter most? Well, how do we solve the problem of subjective guessing? Here is the real game changer. A digital scoring matrix automatically calculates environmental significance by analyzing impact severity, regulatory exposure, and stakeholder concern to prioritize critical environmental risks. Literally, instead of different departments arguing over what's important, you just plug the data in. It forces a rigorous, totally standardized evaluation across the entire organization. As you'll see, because of this digital matrix, things like toxic solvent emissions shoot straight to the top as a high significance score. Because frankly, the severity is huge and the regulatory exposure is massive. Meanwhile, packaging waste might sit at medium, maybe driven by stakeholder concern but lower regulatory fines. And something like office noise, that drops to low. This beautifully automated quantitative scoring completely replaces hunches with hard data. It tells leadership exactly where to allocate their budget first. And the beautiful result of all this? 100% objective consistency. Auditors absolutely love this stuff. It means an energy-intensive process in a European plant is judged by the exact same mathematical criteria as the energy used in an Asian plant. The matrix is totally impartial. It's immune to departmental bias. It ensures your environmental priorities are driven by actual risk, not just by whichever department complains the loudest. Finally, we wrap up with Section 5, linking risks to action. Because, let's be real, identifying and scoring these risks is pretty much useless if it doesn't trigger a change in the real world. Here's the exact auditable trail that proves your EMS actually works. Step 1, an aspect, let's say energy consumption, is identified. Step 2, it gets scored by our digital matrix. Step 3, the matrix flags it as a high priority risk. And Step 4, this instantly triggers the establishment of a formal environmental objective. So that high score for energy consumption automatically mandates a targeted objective to, say, reduce electricity use by 12% over 2 years. The data directly dictates the action. So which leaves us with a final, pretty provocative question to think about. Are your organization's environmental priorities based on hard, automated data from a digital matrix, or are they just based on organizational convenience? Are you managing the risks that are truly threatening the environment and your compliance, or just the ones that are easiest to toss into a binder? It's a vital distinction, and it's literally what separates a certified, world-class system from one that falls apart under scrutiny. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.